which I should inflict upon him, in case I were to remain indifferent to the manifestations of his friendship. He added, we ought both to enlighten the condition of animals whenever we can, and at the same time to facilitate in ourselves that union of the world of all spirits, which the sacrifice of Christ has made possible. End footnote. Here, for instance, is an example of Christian non-resistance from Richard Weaver's autobiography. Weaver was a collier, a semi-professional pugilist in his younger days, who became a much-beloved evangelist. Fighting after drinking seems to have been the sin to which he originally felt his flesh most perversely inclined. After his first conversion he had a backsliding, which consisted in pounding a man who had insulted a girl. Feeling that, having once fallen, he might as well be hanged for a sheep as for a lamb, he got drunk and went and broke the jaw of another man who had lately challenged him to fight, and taunted him with cowardice for refusing as a Christian man. I mention these incidents to show how genuine a change of heart is implied in the latter conduct, which he describes as follows. Quote, I went down the drift and found the boy crying because a fellow workman was trying to take the wagon from him by force. I said to him, Tom, you mustn't take that wagon. He swore at me and called me a Methodist devil. I told him that God did not tell me to let him rob me. He cursed again and said he would push the wagon over me. Well, I said, let us see whether the devil and thee are stronger than the Lord and me. And the Lord and I proved stronger than the devil and he. He had to get out of the way, or the wagon would have gone over him. So I gave the wagon to the boy. Then said Tom, I've a good mind to smack thee on the face. Well, I said, if that will do thee any good, thou canst do it. So he struck me on the face. I turned the other cheek to him and said, strike again. He struck again and again, till he had struck me 5 times. I turned my cheek for the 6th stroke, but he turned away, cursing. I shouted after him, the Lord forgive thee, for I do, and the Lord save thee. This was on a Saturday, and when I went home from the coal pit, my wife saw my face was swollen and asked what was the matter with it. I said, I've been fighting, and I've given a man a good thrashing. She burst out weeping and said, Oh, Richard, what made you fight? Then I told her all about it, and she thanked the Lord I had not struck back. But the Lord had struck, and his blows have more effect than man's. Monday came. The devil began to tempt me, saying, The other men will laugh at thee for allowing Tom to treat thee as he did on Saturday. I cried, Get thee behind me, Satan, and went on my way to the coal pit. Tom was the first man I saw. I said, Good morning, but got no reply. He went down first. When I got down, I was surprised to see him sitting on the wagon road waiting for me. When I came to him, he burst into tears and said, Richard, will you forgive me for striking you? I have forgiven thee, said I. Ask God to forgive thee. The Lord bless thee. I gave him my hand, and we went each to his work. Close quote. Love your enemies. Mark you, not simply those who happen not to be your friends, but your enemies, your positive and active enemies. Either this is a mere Oriental hyperbole, a bit of verbal extravagance, meaning only that we should, as far as we can, abate our animosities, or else it is sincere and literal. Outside of certain cases of intimate individual relation, it seldom has been taken literally. Yet it makes one ask the question, can there in general be a level of emotion so unifying, so obliterative of differences between man and man, that even enmity may come to be an irrelevant circumstance, and fail to inhibit the friendlier interests aroused. If positive well-wishing could attain so supreme a degree of excitement, those who were swayed by it might well seem superhuman beings. Their life would be morally discrete from the life of other men, and there is no saying, in the absence of positive experience, of an authentic kind, for there are few active examples in our scriptures, and the Buddhistic examples are legendary. What the effects might be, they might conceivably transform the world. Footnote: as where the future Buddha, incarnated as a hare, jumps into the fire to cook himself for a meal for a beggar, having previously shaken himself 3 times so that none of the insects in his fur should perish with him. End footnote. Psychologically and in principle, the precept, "Love your enemies," is not self-contradictory. It is merely the extreme limit of a kind of magnanimity with which, in the shape of pitying tolerance of our oppressors, we are fairly familiar. Yet, if radically followed, it would involve such a breach with our instinctive springs of action as a whole, and with the present world's arrangements, that a critical point would practically be passed, and we should be born into another kingdom of being. Religious emotion makes us feel that other kingdom to be close at hand, within our reach. The inhibition of instinctive repugnance is proved not only by the showing of love to enemies, but by the showing of it to anyone who is personally loathsome. In the annals of Saintliness, we find a curious mixture of motives impelling in this direction. Asceticism plays its part, and along with charity pure and simple, we find humility, or the desire to disclaim distinction and to grovel on the common level before God. Certainly, all 3 principles were at work when Francis of Assisi and Ignatius of Loyola exchanged their garments with those of filthy beggars. All 3 are at work when religious persons consecrate their lives to the care of leprosy or other peculiarly unpleasant diseases. The nursing of the sick is a function to which the religious seem strongly drawn, even apart from the fact that church traditions set that way. But in the annals of this sort of charity, we find fantastic excesses of devotion recorded, which are only explicable by the frenzy of self-immolation simultaneously aroused. Francis of Assisi kisses his lepers. Margaret Mary Alacoque, Francis Xavier, St. John of God, and others, are said to have cleansed the sores and ulcers of their patients with their respective tongues, and the lives of such saints as Elizabeth of Hungary and Madame de Chantal are full of a sort of reveling in hospital purulence disagreeable to read of, and which makes us admire and shudder at the same time. End of Lecture 11.